What is going on, everyone? This is Joshua here of Epitaph of Joshua. I talk movies, TV, and on a few occasions, music and anime. And yep, we're in a voiceover, and once again, it's been a while since I last done this, a review roundup. And I figured since I've been seeing some movies from this year that I haven't really been on the best job of reviewing movies of this year or last year or even older films, I figure we do a little bit of a review roundup for some movies that I have been watching this year. Now, as I said in my live stream when I was talking about a kickback in chat, without the access of a laptop or any co-editors, it's been pretty hard trying to get as much consistency out as possible. But like I said, there are a lot of 2026 movies I have seen. Some of them I have reviewed, and some of them I have not. So I'm going to do this one or two ways with some of these. Some of these are going to be audio form. Some of these are going to be live streams. Some of these are going to be quickened reviews. And even with some of the older stuff, I do want to kind of do the same thing. So I'm pretty much experimenting. And we're going to do our first batch of 2026 review catch up. So, because we are in the summer movie season, and a lot of these movies I should have reviewed a lot more earlier and sooner. But either I was just a little unmotivated, as I spoke on in one of my live streams, or just the fact that I just really wasn't ready to talk about these. But we're here now. We're going to talk about some of these, and I've picked at least seven movies here to talk about. So this is going to be fun. We're going to range the different qualities from good to bad, and I'm going to enjoy getting my thoughts on these out of the way. Now, some of these reviews I'm going to have more to say than others. Some of them I won't. But if you have seen any of these movies, let's talk about it. And unfortunately, the first movie we're going to talk about here is Joe's College Road Trip, which you knew this was coming. This is the first of a spinoff with the character Joe. This was written, directed, produced, and starring George Truly, Tyler Perry, and stars Jermaine Harris, Amber Rain Smith, and Millie Jackson. In Joe's College Road Trip, we see the character of Joe accompany his grandson BJ on the college road trip before he goes to college. So what happens, he's graduating high school and he's deciding where to continue his education. His friends want him to go to Pepperdine University, where some a few others wants him to go to a different college. So Brian hears this and asks Medea and Joe for help. And so what happens is we have a lot that's going on in this. And to be honest with you, I'm just going to get it out of the way right now. I went into this movie a little curious to see how Joe was going to be. And when it comes to Tyler Perry, I do respect the man as a businessman. The fact that he came from nothing, he worked himself up to have his own company, do what he wants to do rather than let Hollywood tell him to do what he wants to do himself. And when it comes to some of his movies, especially some of the Medea ones, I do like most of them for the most part as guilty pleasures. They're not good movies, but some of them I do like as guilty pleasures. Then you have some movies of his that I just do not care for and just really was just made me starting to wake up and see the issues with him. I did not enjoy Tyler Perry's Straw from last year. I didn't review it, but it's going to be on my worst of 2026, which I've been promising for months. Medea's Destination Wedding was a little better, but at the same time, still had the same amount of issues that just plague his movies. And those movies, they have some moments of fun to them, but it's plain as day to see that I am just getting pretty annoyed with the Tyler Perry stick. And maybe it's because I'm getting older, or it's just maybe it's because I see a lot of the criticisms that a lot of people see. And I'm just gonna be blunt with you. I did not care for this movie. I did not care for Joe's College Road Trip. In positives, I'll say, in terms of the positives, there are some funny moments. When the case of Joe, there's one scene where he's fighting a bunch of people in a club. I actually really do like that. That was actually funny. The movie tries to attempt a message about how new generation has to step up and keep fighting. A part of me can appreciate this, but again, it's like we've done this message so many times to where if this was better written, I would have actually cared more about this when it comes to it. And also, I'll say some of the cast tries. The actor who plays BJ does fine. The girl that they pick up, I do like the actress. She did fine. So they're having to work with material that's just kind of not there. But I'll give it credit. They did try. But that's all I can really give you in terms of positives because everything else in this movie, I was just really not a fan of it when it comes to it. One, I feel like the story here, it feels like you're trying hard to rip off National Lampoon's Vacation, except with a man, with Joe. And this just didn't really work for me. I was just sitting here watching the movie. I've seen this movie twice, unfortunately. Well, maybe three times, unfortunately, just so I can make sure my thoughts are exactly how I feel. And there are some. I get what Tyler's trying to do, but it's the same exact thing that we have done, and it's just pretty much it, it's just pretty much a slog to get through a points. And like I said, there's a few laughs in there that I got, but it's just everything that you've seen here. It's been done before with Tyler Perry, and it's just gotten to a point where even he is not trying anymore in terms of his writing and directing. BJ, I get the character. I get why he acts the way he is because he's raised respectfully. But when you have moments of Joe telling him to eat chicken and he's scared to eat the chicken, and not only that, when he and I basically you just have this moment where you have the whole movie. You have old generation versus new generation in a battle of wills, and that alone should have been something a little bit more heartfelt. But they go from across the country to Tennessee, which I don't even want to talk about the stuff going on in my state, but it was nice seeing Tennessee here. But there's just moments here with BJ. I'm like, dude, you're with your grandpa. He's just trying to teach you something. But some of the things in this movie, I'm like, no, you're just going a bit off the rails here. And not only that, it kind of just makes this characters look very unlikable. It even makes Joe a bit unlikable. It's bad enough when you have him acting like a pimp and being misogynistic and also being saying the N word constantly, which that's the stick of Joe. So you kind of have to get used to that. But at the same time, it's no excuse to turn in something that's just pretty bland and pretty lazy. And not only that, I feel like the technical aspects here are lazy. From a music standpoint, from a cinematography standpoint, a couple of decent moments of cinematography because they did shoot on location for most part. The editing, I'll say, is pretty quick. I say I got through it, but at the same time, it just feels like even the direction is lazy because in recent movies, it's just starting to kind of show that maybe that Tyler, he's been wanting to be done with this character and the character of Medea for years, but Netflix and even Amazon Prime just gives him a shit ton of money and he just keeps doing it. Jazzman's Blues, say what you will about that, and I have my own issues with that, but at least he was kind of still trying there. And I have not seen the Six Triple A. I've heard some good things from people. I've also heard it wasn't very good. So, but at the same time, it's like, how many more times can you run the same type of humor before it gets stale? Granted, you're rated R, you're raunchy. This is Joe, so there's no excuse as to why the shit should be freaking lazy and incompetent and just pretty bland as it is. It's no excuse. It's just making you feel incompetent and it's making you look pretty bad in terms of this. And not only that, the ending of this movie, I'm not even going to get into the ending of this movie, but when BJ starts to grow up hair, it just makes me, oh my god. But the thing that really pisses me off is that when you have other black directors like Ryan Coogler and Jordan Peele, say what you will about Jordan Peele, but at least he gives quality black films, even if a movie that's just meh. And also, when you have Ryan Coogler having to do movies like Sinners, which just got a total of 16 nominations for Oscars, and when you have directors like Spike Lee and such, is not an excuse to turn in such mediocrity as you will see from black movies like this. This is exactly why when you hear people criticize black films, most of the time, is usually bad movies like this or Twin. And John Singleton, may he rest in peace, even he has a better track record than Mr. Perry. So this movie is no excuse. When you have people, even audiences who are non-black, saying you can do better with black films, that the least you can do is actually take some criticism, and not only that, just take the criticism, and not only that, just you can do try harder. But mainly, that's the thing with Perry. Maybe he doesn't want to take the criticism. He just likes doing this where he is. And look, I try to be reasonable here. I try to be fair, but as a fellow black film lover and someone who loves movies, we need more from the black movies. There are so many genres, so many directors, and so many ideas you could handle. It's no excuse to keep settling for mediocrity or such from Tyler Perry. And if you guys enjoyed this movie, that's fine. I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm not going to say you're stupid. I'm not going to call you names. But I've kind of just reached my points where I just want to be done with these Tyler Perry movies. There are so many other black directors you could be watching out for, like Barry Jenkins, Boots Riley, Ryan Coogler. He just won a fucking Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay for Sinners, for God's sakes. There's even black movies in the past. There's black movies that we got coming out based on books, original ideas. There's so much you can do in the black community. And there's not, and you just want to settle for the bullshit mediocrity like this. Look, I'm not doing this to hurt him. I'm not doing this to tell him what to do. But if you're going to be doing this, you've been doing this directing thing with movies since 2005. You've been doing your plays for longer. You should be putting a lot more commitments, a lot more effort. You have $1 billion. You have a production company of your own. You could be hiring writers, hiring directors, helping people get their budget and get their movies and ideas on screen. Ryan Coogler does it. Fucking John Singleton did it. Even Jordan Peele does it. Say what you want about him. At least he was helping people get their ideas off the ground. You just, it's just, I'm afraid if I go on any longer, I'm gonna exhaust myself. So in conclusion, if unless you are a Tyler Perry fan or you just want to see Joe be unhinged, you might like this more than I did. But at the same time, this is kind of my last resort with Tyler Perry because I'm just tired of this. It's the same thing he's done multiple times, too many times at this point, and it's gotten to the point where it's just become stale. And not only that, I'm done with this. I'm just done. I'm not done with black movies in general because I still enjoy watching black movies, even if I have my issues with watching movies about slavery and black trauma and such. Because at some point, I can only take so much. But Tyler Perry, if you don't want to take criticism and do better, if you don't care, then why should we? I know some people get some guilty pleasure enjoyment out of this, but even you guys can admit that Tyler is starting to fall off, or he has been falling off the past couple of years. When Medea Family Funeral came out in 2019, that should have been the end. And again, if you guys like this movie, that's great. We all have different tastes. And I can appreciate some things here, some moments of humor, intended messages of what he's trying to say about generations. But come on, after a while, I'm just done. And on my rating scale, unless you're a fan of Tyler Perry or you want to watch this movie or you're bored, you may like it more do. But on my rating scale, I'm just gonna say I'm gonna have to tell you to skip it. This is not worth it, and you can do a lot better in terms of black movies. Go watch Sinners again. Go watch Spider-Verse.
Oh my god, the bad movies doesn't stop here as we have Sleepwalker, which is directed by Brandon Auman. Shit. Hopefully we get to a good one or some great ones here soon, which we will. A grieving mother is haunted by the tragic loss of her daughter in a car accident that left her abusive husband in a coma. As she battles a surreal descent into darkness, her sleepwalking episodes intensifies. And plagued with haunting visions of her husband inside her home, she grapples with the blurred lines between realities and nightmares. That premise sounds actually pretty clever, right? If only the movie was not so half-assed. And the only reason I was curious, I just was bored, so I figured I watched this. And the only reason why I stayed with this movie and I didn't shut it off is for one reason alone, which we're about to get to. But this is one of the most generic, boring, and lazily and extremely cheap horror movies I've ever seen. And I know this movie had a small budget, but this is just one of the most boring ass horror films and one of the most stupidest, lamest horror films I've seen in 2026. And I saw The Strangers Chapter 3. I saw Twin, and Twin pissed me off even more than this. But this was easily a contestant for this. And the main reason I only stick with this, which is one of the few positives I can give to it, and that is Hayden Panettiere. I'm a fan of Hayden Panettiere. I like her and a lot of things I've seen her in. Bring It On, All or Nothing. I even grew up having a crush on Hayden Panettiere. And I liked seeing her back for Scream 6. She's easily one of my favorite characters in that franchise. But she was one of the only few things I was counting on this movie to get through, because I thought she was actually genuinely doing her best to try and put some commitment and put some life into this. I also will say some of the other cast members tries, and it had decent intentions, but the story and the visuals especially, and even the writing, does not do a damn thing to impress you here. Seriously, you could tell that this feels like a first draft screenplay here. Not only that, I feel like the jump scares in this movie are pretty damn cheap. Jump scares, they can work most of the time, but most of the times in horror movies, jump scares just doesn't cut it when it comes to a movie like this. This feels like a movie that you could find in the $7, $3 bin at one of your local stores, and nothing would go wrong. And you just be like, fuck that, I'm going to get me a better movie out of the bin. Not only that, I feel like the direction is not anything to write home about. And I will give you credit because you had a small budget. You couldn't do much with this. But there is no excuse when you have Leonardo DiCaprio's production company as a part of your many production companies here. And not only that, they don't even try to do something interesting with this. All I was just sitting here doing watching this was just being bored out of my mind. And I'll give credit to Brandon Allman. He's trying to make something out of this. The visuals are interesting enough in some parts, and the transitional stuff in editing is decent enough. You could tell there's some moments where he's trying to make something competent here, but that's not enough when everything else in this movie is complete and utter crap. And not only that, when I'm sitting here for at least 90 some odd minutes, I sat here for at least 89 minutes. Felt like 2 hours and 5 minutes. I'm sitting here mostly bored out of my mind. You got a problem up your ass, because I should not be fucking bored watching a movie like this. I should be thrilled. I should be scared, and they don't do that. You don't really get anything out of that. And not only that, the ending of this movie, I pretty fucking hated. I did not care for this ending, and I thought this ending was just fucking stupid. It was childish, and I find it to be pretty lazy. So, in conclusion, despite some effort from Hayden Panettiere and some interesting visuals, the story of Sleepwalkers and the execution of Sleepwalkers is just not very good, and makes it for one of the most boring horror movies I've seen in 2026 so far. And easily is going to be on my worst movies of the year, which I still need to carry. Unscary, generic, forgettable. The premise is interesting. Hayden Panettiere does a good job. So is Justin Chadwick and Beverly D'Angelo, even with the voice notices from her and some of the other supporting cast here. But unless you want to watch something that's going to bore the hell out of you for 8-9 minutes, I do not recommend this movie. On my rating scale, I was this close to giving it my worst of the worst. But we ain't got there yet, once again, aside from Twin. Because of the few positives that was here, I'm going to spare you to get out of my face. But I'm giving this movie the grade of a skip you out of 5. And it's lucky I'm giving it that. Next up is going to be The Dutchman. And this one was just a meh one. This was one of the very first movies I watched this year. This one is directed by Andre Gaines, and this stars Andre Holland, K1ller, and Zazie Beetz, Aldous Hodge, and Stephen McKinley Henderson. And the premise is a successful black businessman is haunted by his crumbling marriage and identity crisis, and he is drawn into a physical game of cat and mouse with a mysterious woman he encounters on a New York subway. This one I thought was just okay. It's just okay. Not terrible. Not as bad as it thought it was going to be, but this one had a lot going for it in terms of its premise. This is based on the play, which I didn't know until the credits came on. But for the most part, this movie had me interested. You have a main character who's having issues going on in his marriage and an identity crisis. Then you have a white woman, of course, coming in and having him question everything and flirting with him. And that part of the movie I actually think is really solid here. I think this is a very well directed film for the budget that it has. Andre Gaines, he gets some great looking shots. It's one of the most beautiful looking movies of all year, despite it being an independent film from the cinematography standpoint. The cast of actors I really do enjoy. Andre Holland I really love. K1ller and Zazie Beetz, two gorgeous, beautiful women. especially Zazie Beetz. I think she's a very good actress, and so is Kate despite some iffy roles. Stephen McKinley Henderson, I think, is great. You also have Lauren Banks and Aldous Hodge. I think it was a good job. I think they all do a very good job here, but it's really Andre, Kate, and Zazie that makes this movie watchable. And I think everyone else gives it their all here. I think the score, the editing is fine. The movie's not too long. It is 95 minutes. I think the biggest issue when it comes to this movie for me is, while I do appreciate the risks that it takes here in terms of being a thriller that's more experimental and definitely takes some swings and goes for it, this movie just tries to do a little bit too much in trying to do that, and this would have easily benefited more in terms of being a regular thriller. Now, I do applaud the risk, don't get me wrong. You do see that there's an experimental affair going on with Kate and such, and it's trying to be smart about how it's telling its story, and I appreciate it, but I just wish it just stuck to being more straightforward and try not to be too much of what you're set out to be. And that is also why I feel like the film does falter. There's great moments in here, there's some great exciting thrills, and it does get unhinged towards the last half of the film. I just wish the film just did more in terms of what it was striving to do and trying to be more experimental and trying to go into a lot of chaotic places. But the ending of the movie also didn't really come together for me either, because I was invested in these characters. I was invested in the story. I just wish I was invested more in terms of what we're dealing with here, that actually had a little bit more to go for here. Because after a while, when you get to the last couple of minutes, I'm just like, the ending of this movie doesn't work for me either. The character work, the filmmaking, and the story was working, but it's just the last half of the movie is where I feel like the movie really tries to go into some experimental side, and in some ways it works. I do give it credit for it, but at the same time, I feel like we could have just took a detour. We don't need to overcomplicate things, but at the same time, it just feels like we're trying to do too much in these last couple minutes. Overall, I think this movie is just fine. It's not great. It's not something I ever watch again, but for the performances, for the cinematography, and for the direction, and for the first 2/3 of this film, I was into it. It's just, I wish the last half of this movie did come together a lot better to make it a lot more worthwhile. It's not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. I just feel like we could have did just a little bit better in terms of the third act and the ending. But overall, this isn't a bad movie. I did enjoy this enough to where I can be content with it. And it's something I think you could rather much watch on streaming, because I don't think a lot of you went out to go see it in theaters. But if it is on streaming or physical media or such, give it a watch. You might like it more than I did. I know some people didn't really care for it. I'm just being more lenient on it than most people. So on my rating scale, I will give this a stream limit, because there are good moments in here. I just kind of feel like we could have just, if the third act was not so experimental and just stuck the landing a little better, I would have called this an underrated gem of 2026. Talk about one of the bigger surprises this year, and that is Primates. This was directed by Johannes Roberts, and this this one was pretty interesting. Like, I did not see this one coming, especially for a January film to start off the year. This stars Johnny Sequoia, Troy Kazur, Victoria Wyatt, and Jessica Alexander. And you follow a college student named Lucy as she and her friends spend the vacation at her family's home in Hawaii, which includes her pet chimpanzee, Ben. However, when Ben contracts rabies after being bit by a rabid animal, the group must fight for their lives in order to avoid the non-violent chimp. Kinda sounds like Cujo, does it? Yeah, it does. Now, like I said, it's crazy that I actually was genuinely surprised by this movie because when I saw the trailers for this and the poster, I'm like, what the hell are we doing here? This just looks like one of the stupidest horror films you could release in January. And having watched it back in January, the day it came out, it's not the greatest movie ever made, and it's not going to be one of the best movies ever in this year. But for a January horror film, this surprised me a hell of a lot. A hell of a lot. And I'm going to start off with the biggest positive I can give to this movie is that the chimp, Ben, is actually really terrifying. And I say this as a positive because you could easily did this with CGI and it would not have looked as good. But wow, this was actually really cool. I really dug what the look of this is going for. It has good suspense, and it did a good job having me nervous and having me anxiety filled this whole time. And using the one small location is very well. And it gets pretty over the top, but there's also parts where it didn't go too over the top. It didn't go too ballistic as it should have been. Because a movie like this, you easily could have fell into the trap. It had the right balance to make me feel satisfied here. The setup was pretty scary enough, and Ben is really creepy because when you have a practical suit and an actor put in here, he looks great. Ben looks great. I smiled at the fact that we're dealing with some practical effects in this horror movie, and I'm like, thank you. That's the obvious thing you should do. Because if this was computer generated, I don't think it will have that same effect. Not that it would look bad per se, but for me, practicality is always a win. And I genuinely think they succeeded in making that really successful and really making a commitment. I also will say the directing is pretty solid here and is decently shot for a modest budget. It's not too oversaturated, it's not too overstimulated, it's just right. And the cast here is mostly good, but the real standouts here is Johnny Sequoia. Yes, that's the actress's real name, and I definitely want to see where she goes for in the future. Troy Kutzer, I think, does a really good job. I haven't seen a whole lot of him. I know he did the movie Coda, released in 2021, but I really enjoyed his performance. Some of the other actors were just there to kind of like Jessica Alexander and Victoria Wyatt, Benjamin Chang, and Tian Simon. But I think they all knew what type of movie they were doing. They all did the best they could here in terms of the supporting characters. I also will say I really like the score of the film. It's terrifying, it's atmospheric, and it gets the job done. So you can't ask more for that. And by the end of the movie, I was pretty satisfied with some of this. And I like some of the stuff that they did in terms of Ben. Where the issues does come into this movie for me is some of these characters I just didn't really give a shit about in spots aside from Troy Kotsur and Johnny Sequoia's character, and maybe the black character to a certain extent. But a lot of these other characters didn't really get us a whole lot of development. I'm not asking this to be Shakespearean Academy Awards where you get tons of character development, because in some horror movies you have to know what you are, and I'd rather have a movie that knows what it is than try to be something that you're not. But that is one of my biggest complaints when it comes to the film. I also will say, we gonna be honest about it, I'm gonna be brutal with you. I did not like some of the writing in this movie, and some of the writing in this movie was kind of just convenient and kind of familiar, but at the same time, I wasn't really bothered by most of that. I know some people will say that's an easy given, but a lot of that I was able to just take on its own terms, and I just didn't really care for the way they choose to reveal some things about Ben. Like, it's good stuff you're revealing about Ben, absolutely, but at the same time, I feel like you could do a lot more in terms of this reveal with Ben. I feel like there could have been a little bit more here when it comes to it. So, those are really my only two issues, and it does have its familiar territory. You're pretty much watching a chimpanzee's version of Cujo, which, if anything, whether you love or hate this movie, the one thing this movie will tell you is not to fuck with chimpanzees, because chimpanzees will bite you in the ass. But overall, not the most original thing ever, but I definitely appreciate what this movie was trying to go for here in terms of horror films. It is original enough while having some familiar beats to stand on its own feet, but I think this is also a very capably directed film. It's easily the best thing that this director, Johannes Roberts, has done, because I did like Prairie Night as a guilty pleasure. It has issues, and I don't care for 47 Meters Down, at least the sequel. The first one was fine, but this is easily the best movie I think he's done. And the cast was good. I liked the tension. Ben was pretty convincing. And overall, if you're a fan of movies like this, I think you'll have some fun with it. It's on physical media. It's also on Paramount Plus, or should be getting ready to go to Paramount Plus, or coming out on Blu-ray and DVD and digital and 4K. So definitely watch this. You may like it. Some of you will hate it. But overall, I had a damn decent time with this. Like I said, for a January horror movie, and for a January movie, considering how we know January is the cream of the crop, where they just release crap bomb after crap bomb after crap bomb, this could have been a lot worse. But I had such a fun time watching this movie. And on my rating scale, I'm actually going to give Primate a highly recommended. And I give it a highly recommended because it knew what it was, and it wasn't trying to be anything more. And sometimes that's the best type of horror movie for me. Speaking of another January horror film I really liked is The Rip. Holy shit. Now we get into some ones I really like. This movie is directed by, of course, yours truly, the director, Joe Carnahan. Stars Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Teyana Taylor, Stephen Yeun, Catalina Sandino Marino, Sasha Calle, Scott Adkins, Nestor Carbonell, and Kyle Chandler. And the premise of this movie is pretty interesting. Trust furries when a team of Miami cops discover millions in cash inside a rundown stash house, calling everyone and everything they do into question. This one just had me interested because it's Matt Damon and Ben Affleck doing a movie together. I love when you see these guys do movies together. Between this, The Last Duel, which I watched back in 2022, a year after it came out, and Good Will Hunting, and many others. These two are not only great actors and filmmakers, but they're also the best of friends. And this had me interested for the trailer because I really like movies like this. I'm a fan of Joe Carnahan's work for the most part. I didn't see Shadow Forest, but I really like Smoking Aces. I'm a fan of movies like Boss Level. The A-Team is guilty pleasure. The Glory is pretty awesome. And I still need to see Narc, but this had me curious on the trailer because it just looked like something I watched. And having watched it back in January, this was another one I actually really had a fucking good time with. Now, easily the issues are here when it comes to a Netflix film. It does have that Netflix filter that at some points it can be pretty exhausting watching in a lot of movies and shows of today. But I think overall, for the movie that we got here, I thought this movie, the cinematography looked pretty nice here. Granted, movies nowadays has this kind of filter, but sometimes you can put a lot of color and have a different visual flair into it. And this movie, I was sitting there having a good time with this. I was like, this is awesome. I love this. And there's some good action here, some good tension and twists and turns. Joe Carnahan knows how to film a movie. He knows how to make a movie. It's shot well for the budget that you have. And I was just sitting there really having a good time with the film. I thought that the film overall had a lot to offer in terms of it. The movie really did do his job in being a intense thriller of with these group of people having to figure out what they do with this money and also what happens here and realizing that everything has a price. But it is something we've seen before, but did it bother me that we've seen this here? No, because I was still really enjoying a lot of what this movie was going for. So, cinematography-wise, I think the movie looks good. I also think, acting-wise, the film is very good. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck are a no-brainer. These two have been doing it in the game for years, and they got this on lockdown. So I should not expect anything bad out of them. The rest of this cast, I think, is really good. Steven Yeun, a.k.a. Invincible. He's always great. Love him. Catalina Sandino Moreno, I thought she was pretty good in Ballerina, so it was nice seeing her here. I almost forgot she was in Twilight Saga Eclipse, which was pretty shocking looking at her resume. Sasha Calle, the former DCEU Supergirl in films, didn't get the best love there, but she's good here, and I'm actually really happy that she's getting more work despite that decision that happened with the Flash bombing. Kyle Chandler, always great. Scott Adkins, he's decent. Teyana Taylor, Academy Award nominee Teyana Taylor, as I should say now, she's really stepped up her game over since Medea's Big Happy Family, which was the first thing I saw her in. She is starting to become a pretty damn good actress every time I see her. And while I did have my issues with one battle after another to where I thought it was good but a little overhyped, she was not one of them. In fact, I thought she was one of the best things in it despite her character not liking as much. But I think the acting is good, the music, filmmaking, all of that is good, and the story was very easy to follow. And 113 minutes, I was really enjoying it. My main issues, two of them. One of them is why I did enjoy the shootouts and the dirty cops and such. I just wanted a little bit more out of some of these characters here. Two, the reveal that they pull here, it goes a little bit off of rails by the film's climax. Now, it's great. It is interesting, to say the least. I do appreciate the fact that you did that. But I did feel like the movie went just a little bit off the rails by the film's climax, simply because you did reveal a little twist a bit early on, and it should have been saved for later. Also, why the hell is this not a theatrical release? I'm seriously, Netflix. I'm glad you're starting to take advantage of that, and also you want to take advantage of putting your shit on physical media more, and also putting your movies in the theaters more, and hopefully break out into the theatrical vibe. But this could have easily been a Netflix theatrical experience, though. You can do a theatrical release. It's just stop being so damn anti-streaming. I said it before, and I'm gonna say it again until you get it into your fucking heads. Put your shit in the theaters, Netflix. Thank you. You might get some people surprised. Also, I will say another one of my last issues that this is something familiar, and it does go a little slow. But the three words I love to use, what do I like to say? Execution is everything. And execution means everything. No matter how good, how bad, or how familiar something is, you can always count on execution. But overall, I really had a good time watching this one. The Rip, man, another one of those movies that was better than it had any right to be. I really love Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. I love the action. I like the story despite its familiarities. And while the reveal does blow itself a little bit too early and it goes a little off the rails at the end of the film, I thought this was a huge step up for Joe Carnahan after Shadow Forest, which I didn't see Shadow Forest. But if you have Netflix or such, I would say watch it. But as much as I am against anti-streaming services right now, because theatrical and physical media are the best ways to go, I can be lenient when it comes to these streaming services when you try. And when you do movies like this, or even something amazing like K-pop Demon Hunters or such, but when you don't put in the effort, then why is it on streaming? Or is this going to be low-hanging fruits? So on my rating scale, and also, this was inspired by some true events. So on my rating scale, I'm going to give The Rip a highly recommended. Like I said, the film's climax could have been a little bit fixie upbeat, but everything else makes this worthwhile watch. It might not work for you, but it does work for me. And back to the crappy movies we go, because Killer Whale. God damn it. God fucking damn it, man. Jesus. Another bad fucking movie. And this is a straight-to-video horror film. This time is directed by Joanne Bracken. Shit. Okay, you know what? Fuck it. Let's go unhinged. This movie follows best friends Maddie and Trish as they find themselves trapped in a remote lagoon with the dangerous killer whale named Sito. I am not making this shit up. To be honest, I did not want to watch this, honestly. I really didn't want to watch this back in January. Look, it's bad enough we already have one of the worst movies of this year in the case of Twin. But no, man, this was just fucking dumb. Man, oh my god. This movie goes into so many different fucking directions during this crazy shark shenanigans. Almost everything about this movie is terrible. This is not even hilariously bad. This is just exhaustingly bad. Virginia Gardner, what the hell is going on between this and A Breed Apart? And I like Virginia Gardner. She's a good actress. I like her as Carolina Dean in The Marvel's Runaways. I like her in a few other things, even if it's a shitty movie. What's going on here? Did you owe somebody a favor for this? Seriously. Granted, The only pros I'll give to this movie is some of this cast is desperately trying, especially Virginia Gardner and the second lead girl. Mitchell Hope is just there. He was just there in Descendants. Isaac Crawley, Luke Cunningham, and some of the other actors, I feel like they're doing the best that they can with this material. That's all I can give. Because nothing else in this movie works for me. The directing in this movie is so amateur hour and so bland and so out of control that I don't even know what the hell this movie is trying to go for here. This movie goes in so many bizarre directions. 1 minute it wants to be a horror movie. 1 minute it wants to be a sports event. 1 minute it wants to be a fucking bank robbery during these crazy shark shenanigans. I'm like, what the hell? What the hell is this? And the only reason why I watched this movie is because so far in January, there wasn't anything else much for me to watch just yet. Also, I was still trying to catch up on movies from last year, which I still have fully done that. Also, I was trying to balance so much for the channel and outside the channel. That's why I watched this, even with trying to miss movies from this year that I haven't watched yet. That's the only reason I watched it, because there was nothing else coming out in January yet. Also, I was just pretty bored. So that's the reason why I watched this crap. The effects in this movie are fucking hilariously terrible. What the seriously, what the fuck are these effects, man? We had better effects with the sharks in Jaws and in Deep Blue Sea and in The Shallows than you did this piece of shit. The effects in this movie reminds you of PlayStation 2 graphics, almost as bad as The Rock in The Mummy Returns 2001 style, honey, except not fully rendered. And you know this movie is trash when you can't even make the shark action enjoyable, especially with terrible editing, terrible effects, and terrible script writing. The characters and the story is lazy. The writing is incomprehensibly dull, exhausting, lazy, arrogant. And not only that, is laughably, atrociously awful. Like I said, these actors are doing the best they can, especially Virginia Gardner, but even Virginia Gardner, as fine as she is, and as good of an actress as she is, she deserves better. There is no reason why these are monster movies and creature features. It's the same damn problem I have with people who tries to use the excuse it's a kids movie with Minecraft, Five Nights at Freddy's, and Super Mario Brothers when you're just supposed to shut your brain off and have fun. Bullshit. That is not an excuse anymore. And it's relaxed, Josh. It's a monster movie. No. I know effects are hard, but when you have effects that look this freaking bad, you're just being incompetent for the sake of being incompetent. And not only that, you're being lazy. And that is not cool. Not cool whatsoever with a movie like this. You're being amateur, you're being childish, and you're being pathetic when it comes to effects like this. And I don't care what low budget you have. I've seen better with less. But it's really that, the story, and the bizarre direction that this movie has no fucking idea what it wants to be. What the hell are you trying to be? Do you want to be a comedy? Do you want to be a shark movie? What do you want to be? Because from what I see a movie that is just so embarrassingly unashamed to be what it is. And not only that, for an hour and a half, this shit is boring. Holy shit, this movie is so fucking boring, man. It felt like I was watching A Nightmare on Elm Street 117 if it was a thing. And with the most lame duck, lame jerk sucker excuse of characters, the lame jerk sucker excuse of a story. And not only that, I'm sitting here not giving a damn about anything that's going on. And I'm like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? Because after a while, I just almost wanted to shut this thing off. I almost wanted to shut this fucking thing off because I was sitting here that mad with a movie like this, bro. I was. Jesus. I'm not gonna harp and rant and rave on this movie anymore because this is almost an hour in, and this is 54 minutes into this video or this review, and I still have one more or two more movies left to get through. Overall, a terrible movie, no redeeming qualities aside from Virginia Gardner and some of this cast. But that is not enough to save this movie when the rest of your film is complete crap, from the effects, from the story, to the direction, to the tone. Everything about this movie is terrible. This is my second least favorite movie of the year so far. If it had not been for Twin, this easily would be number one. But Twin pissed me off so much because as a fan of black cinema and as someone who is a black film lover, I expect a lot more from a movie like this. Do not waste your fucking time unless you just want to sit here and laugh unintentionally. But even if you laugh unintentionally, you can't even enjoy this. On my rating scale, this gets the worst of the worst. This movie, I hate it so much to the point where you can get the fuck out of my face. Because this movie easily pissed me off immediately after it was over, to the point where even with my few positives, it does not come close to saving your ass. Because here, you're dumb, you're pathetic, you're being incompetent, and you're being lazy. So, on my rating scale, Killer Whale, get the hell out of my face. Just get on out. Movies, and then that's my rating. This move on. Batch of 2026 reviews off. This is The Plague. This is directed by Charlie Pollinger, and I heard from this one from Cody Leach and a few other ones, which is why I was curious to check it out for myself. And the story of this one has a socially awkward teenager that endures the ruthless hierarchy at a water polo camp, and his anxiety spirals into psychological turmoil over the summer. It's kind of like what the movie Him was trying to do with football, except this is doing it with swimming. This stars Everett Blunk, K.L. Martin, Joel Edgerton, Kenny Rasmussen, Lucas Adler, Caden Burns, Lennox Espy, and Elliot Heffernan. This one, I genuinely thought was pretty good. Man, this was actually really damn solid, man. And this was the first movie of 2026 that I saw, and I should review this back early on the channel because I really wanted to, but just things happen. And I gushed a sigh of relief after watching it because I went into this expecting nothing aside from some content creators and people I knew who were talking about this. And this was a damn good movie, man. Solid enough, mixed with coming of age storytelling that really made it something unique and something interesting. And the thing that I really do like about it is that it has this unnerving way that the film chooses to blend between the reality, between the perceived terror in terms of swimming, and taking a deep and dark representation of the psychological effects of bullying. And it feels like Kubrick with a coming-of-age horror film with a mix of what Him was trying to do. And I feel like it executes it a lot, because this just got under my knees, and it doesn't try to be flashy, it doesn't try to be gory and overly scary, but it's trying to be a relatable piece with good performances. And the performances in this movie are very strong here. So that's where I think the movie does get its high points when it comes to it. It has great tension, it has some great atmosphere, and I think the performances were all really good in this movie by the young actors. Everett Blunk is going to be someone you're going to want to see more of because he was fantastic in here. I also will say K.L. Martin, Kenny Rasmussen, Elliot Heffernan, Lennox Espy, all of the younger kid actors did a very good job in terms of the performances here. But Joel Edgerton as Daddy Wags, this is one of the more darker roles I've seen him do, and it's nice to see him do something that is a lot more darker, a lot more unhinged, and a lot more terrifying. But also the way the movie looks into bullying is really a standout for me because you can see people who are anxious. You can see how bullying and childhood cruelty and social hierarchy, it tackles these themes head on, and that's the thing I really did love about this. You see this nice little blur between game and reality, and I feel like the movie really did honor itself in terms of what the execution was trying to be here. And the filmmaking, I think, is good. Is really good from a cinematography standpoint. Editing, I think, is actually really solid here as well. And also, I will say the score is actually really good here. The score is pretty damn solid for what you get here. So it commits to what it's setting out to do. I do think the movie does get points for that. The issues that does come into play when it comes to this film, I will say there's just very few issues I have with this movie. One, I do feel like the film is a little slow in the middle for a film that is pretty short, and it does get a little bit chaotic towards the end to the point where it is an abrupt ending. So I will say that is also really strong issues here when it comes to it. And I will say there are some moments where the bullying does get a little bit too extreme, but I'd rather you paint a picture of showing how all of this works and rather than just shying away from it. Just really the only two issues when it comes to this movie is it's a little too slow in the middle at a few spots, and it's a bit chaotic towards the end. But overall, I was thoroughly impressed when it comes to The Plague. I think this is a movie that a lot more people should be talking about, and it might go down as one of my favorites of the year. Like I said, I still have to do some best of the year and worst of the year so far catch up before the summer to see what all is going to be on the list. But overall, I really did enjoy this, and if you have not seen The Plague, definitely give it a watch. Some people won't like it, but honestly, I did enjoy this movie myself for what it was. It's not perfect, but I think this is a very solid debut from the director, and whatever he does next, I do want to see it. And this was a story that I found interesting and relatable with some creepy images. So on my rating scale, I'm going to walk away and give this a highly recommendation. Like I said, not everyone's going to agree, not everyone's going to like it, but for me, I appreciated the effort from a movie like this. And we're going to close things out with Dolly. This one I wasn't really going to watch, but I heard some people talking about it, and I feel like I want to talk about it. This one is directed by Rod Blackhurst, and this stars Max Lindsay, Fabian Torres, Sean William Scott, Ethan Subley, and Russ Tiller. Young Macy is adopted by a deranged and monstrous figure who wants to raise her as his child. This one was a decent horror film for 2026. Like I said, there's been some horror movies and some movies I've missed. There are great or good or bad. One of them I really want to talk about in another video. But this movie was grimy, it's gross, it's brutal, and it was visceral. But there is a capable enough horror movie in here. That being said, I don't think this movie is going to be for everyone. So horror is more popular and promising when you do things like this, but this movie knows exactly the story he wants to tell, all the way down to the gritty 16mm visual aesthetics. This feels more like a love letter to horror films from the early 70s, especially the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and there's plenty of blood and gnarly kills in this movie. So I'll give this movie this. It is grimy, it is gross, it is brutal, and it's visceral. And you do have some good kills in here and some good practical effects with this. Because when I was seeing the trailers and hearing people talk about it, I just rubbed it off as like, what the hell are we doing here? And I also thought that this was just going to be just something dumb. But I will say the direction here is capable. It's pretty confident in knowing what it was, and you do see that 16 millimeter film grain used to its advantage. The acting, I also think, is fine enough. Like I said, I just listed off the actors here that we have, and like I said, it's not a big cast, but you know what? I think the cast here does do a fine job in terms of what you're getting here. You also have some other people here like Michelina Schiazelli and Kate Cobb. But I think overall, I think the film's acting and the film's actors do a solid enough job to make this a worthwhile experience. So you definitely get that in terms of what you're going for when it comes to it. But overall, I will say the film does also have some pretty interesting moments in terms of what you're doing here. So that is also something I think does play into it here. What bogs this movie down for me is some of these dumb writing decisions and character decisions here. This is where I feel like the movie does kind of lose its momentum here, because while I was enjoying most of this movie, the characters and some of the writing decisions were not the best in terms of this. And I think a lot of this here kind of was just sitting here like, it's whatever, but not really much else. And there's ideas that this movie wants to explore, but it doesn't explore a lot of them fully 100% through. So I do think overall what the movie had to offer there is kind of just lackluster here. I also will say there are moments in the film where I feel like some of this violence is a little bit too excessive in some of it, to where it gets a little too gross, which I appreciated, but some of it was a little bit too much. But for an independent film, it just knew what it is, and it wasn't trying to be anything more. But it's just, there's interesting ideas you play with, which I'm not going to spoil. I don't want to give them away. But there is ideas here where I feel like we could have explored this more. We could have focused on that more. We could have did some of this more. But there's also the part of me that is like, okay, I know what you're doing and I like where you're going for here, but some of this just is a little bit too gross and a little bit too grotesque here. So some of that I feel like we're just overdoing it here. But overall, while it's not anything I'm gonna rush out to watch again, and I wouldn't recommend to everyone because I know how a lot of you guys are, this is something that for me, I was able to take and able to tolerate a lot more than most people. Like I said, it's not going to be for everybody. So I will say that now, because if I don't, y'all going to look at me like I'm damn crazy. But overall, it's a decent enough film that has its moments, and it knew what it was. So overall, while the film isn't amazing by any stretch of the imagination, this is one I can say for my one watch, I did have a decent time with it despite the glaring issues. So on my rating scale, if I have to rate Dolly, I would say you can stream this thing. It's not something that you really have to rush out and watch unless you're a horror fan or interested. Not gonna be for everyone, but I had a decent watch. And that's going to be the first half of a 2026 review roundup. Now, there are some movies like Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die that I have not reviewed yet. That's because I want to save those for individual review, or just some I might save for a live review. Like I said, I'm going to be blending a lot of my videos and stuff up between voiceover, recording, pre-record so I can edit, and also live stream wise. That way we could just branch out to more than just one, because it's a lot that if I did all of this pre-recorded in voiceover, it's going to be a lot to edit. So I want to stretch the muscles of my flexibility a little bit to get on full born consistency. So in the comment section down below, what did you guys think of this little 2026 review roundup? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Or are you somewhere right in the middle? All my social media links to Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd, Snapchat, TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads, all of that is in the description box down below. If you would like to send any money to my Cash App or Chime to help financially support the channel, you can do that as well. Also, if you'd like to send me anything for my Amazon wish list, there's a lot in there. Get in touch with me privately and you can do that. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to get notified when more videos like this or streams are up. Otherwise, you will not be notified. Also, if you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, be sure to give this a 5-star grade and comment your thoughts. As always, stay epitastic and you guys keep it cool.